Hello and welcome to KRSE Beyond the Ordinary Webcast Radio, where we always have a great time finding out what is going on with our future.
Even though that may not sound great at the moment.
Right, because we always add a little randori to it. Remember from the last program? Yep, we use that. And so we don't get depressed or down or whatever.
And who's here? Clif.
Yeah.
Ah, the beautiful voice.
Are we going over the Clif?
Well, we can, but I've also come across something that's just absolutely fascinating and potentially could be really cool, and somebody out there may want to do it. Sort of a strange symbology experiment, so we could go down that road too. Involves crop circles.
Let's go down that road.
Okay, then let's start way back. Let's turn the way back machine to like 1993. And we have to go over some necessary background here for this to make any sense. In 1993, I started messing about with language. There were two paths I was following, one of which led to the predictive analysis work that I do today, based on large clumps of language all shoved into a database and thrashed hither and thither until something comes up in a froth that looks meaningful. The other path I went on was to develop this software called Vortex, which allows humans to read from computers at up to 2,000 words per minute. In order to do that effectively, I had to educate myself about how the eye works and the visual cortex and all of this kind of thing. And I discovered some really cool things about the human eye and how it is coordinated by the brain and how it shoves information back into the visual cortex, and the fact that the visual cortex is one of the larger masses of the separate brain complex. And so, obviously, the universe likes us to accept information in a visual fashion. And some of the key points to take away from all of that is that when I invented this software, basically what it does is it goes out and gets a big clump of text, and then it shows you one word at a time on the screen in a big font in a very particular manner. Now, I've allowed this to fall off of patent because I don't think patents are meaningful anymore, and they're a waste of time. And I'll tell you that basically the guts of what I did, the patentable part of it all, was that every time you saw the word on the screen, because of the way I was manipulating the screen itself with the computer code, that is to say, reaching into the screen hardware and causing certain things to occur at an assembler language level, you would see the word 3 times, actually, but you would not be consciously aware of it. So even if it dialed up to its maximum, which is about 2,000 words a minute, it was actually showing you those words at a rate of 6,000 words a minute, but your larger consciousness was only perceiving the 2,000 words a minute. However, that's still 10 times faster than most people read from computer screens anyway. And it had an added benefit to it. By splashing the thing 3 times very rapidly, at the rate of the maximum level of refresh rate of the screen, which brought in all kinds of hardware issues, and that's an aside, we were able to get comprehension levels that were staggering. When we tested these kids in, maybe it was 96 or 97 in San Francisco at this educational expo with the software, I showed them an old English version of Alice in Wonderland, and read them maybe 500 or 600 words out of it through Vortex and plowed it through at 200 words a minute. Bear in mind, most of these kids were in their first, second, and third grade, and their reading levels were at 30 and maybe 40 words a minute, and they all got it. And then we went and found these same kids later, and about a half hour later, and talked to them and tested them, and their retention was just staggering, just even over a half an hour. And then at the end of an hour, we found a smaller subset, and they still had a very good retention of everything they'd read for those very few brief seconds. So it was kind of unwitting test on the public, but it educated us as to how important it was to have this extra splashback to make it sink into memory, if that makes sense. It sort of does?
It sort of does. That's amazing.
Okay, so...
It also tells us how spooky you were still, back in 1993.
Well, okay, well, we needn't go there because that's kind of a diversion at the moment, or we can come back to it later. But anyway, so here's the point. This software is still percolating. I still sell a few copies of it. I don't have the time to support it. There's vast quantities of interface changes in Windows and stuff that I just don't want to bother to keep up with. So I sell it to people that are mainly like myself that write a series of macros to make it work very efficiently. But so it's basically an engine. Now, skip to the future here, or the present actually, and we start coming into the crop circles over the past 10 years or so, and their appearance with regularity, and not only that, the clear a distinction between those crop circles, or a sort of clear distinction between those crop circles that are human hoax ones and those that are, let's just say, naturally occurring. Okay? Now, the naturally occurring ones have a very, really cool element in them, and that is that if you spin them optically, they take advantage of many of the same processes with the saccadic movements, the medial muscles, the transference to the optic nerve to the visual cortex that I took advantage of with my Vortex software. And what they do, if you spin these crop circles, you get a geometric image that rises up and becomes three-dimensional. Have you heard of this?
Wow.
Like a hologram or something?
Correct. Exactly. Now, they're very crude, and I'll give you a pointer here, and you can go and experience these for yourself, but the one I'm going to point you at are very crude. But what I'm going to offer everyone who listens to the show is a marvelous idea that we're going to put into the public domain, and some really cool guys out there are going to write one part of it, and some other people are going to do the other part of it, and they're going to put it together, and we'll all have this amazing tool. Because here's the thing. Not only does this effect, let's call it an effect, okay? Not only does the effect of a genuine crop circle, the man-made ones, by the way, don't do this. They're flat, they're unrepresentational, they don't take advantage of the saccadic eye movements and so on the way that the rotating real ones do, the naturally occurring ones.
Right, they're just making those for the tourists.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, but this gives you not only a reference key. That's what everybody's glomming onto. Oh, you can tell the legitimate ones. Here's a reference key.
Oh.
Okay, and that's true. It is a reference key. If you spin it and you get this effect, it's obviously a naturally occurring crop circle. But here's what everybody seems to have missed. The rate at which they're spinning them and the method in which they're doing it is very, very crude, but still, even within there, you can see that there's doubly or triple levels of encoded information. So, what I propose is that we get somebody out there who's a programmer. I would do it in Prolog, but I just have no time at the moment. And I was thinking, well, if it's not done by summer, maybe I'll jump into it and start doing some of it. But we need a program that will allow us to take a JPEG image, which is what we need to reduce the crop circle to. And that has to be altered in just a second. I'll discuss that. But we need a program that will allow us to spin it both clockwise and anti-clockwise at our choice. And this is the necessary interface, and it's very, very straightforward. And allow us to spin it at a rate of, say, 1 revolution a minute up to perhaps 1600 if achievable on modern screens, revolutions a minute. I don't know that we need to go much faster than that, but there's also a case to be made for a specific rate of spin at slightly over 3,000 RPM. I don't know that that's achievable on the modern day screens anyway, but either case, the idea would be that you would take this chunk of software and you would load in a crop circle image. Now the crop circle image would have to be reduced to, or would best be reduced to a digital grayscale kind of a representation of what's out there. You know, a sort of a black and white version of it, flattened out. Because some of them seem to have some elements of three-dimensionality in it, and so we need to be able to do some grayscale shading just to take advantage of that as well. And then there's one other ramification that everybody seems to also have overlooked. A lot of crop circles present a background, if you will, against which the image is displayed. And it's quite clearly a background. In some cases, it's legitimately a frame. In other cases, it's just the contrast between areas that they've pushed over one way in order to heighten the appearance of the inner elements. Now, I think because of the way in which the forces of universe work, we also need to be able to do dual counter-rotating versions of this. And that is to say that if there is a clear background, we need to be able to separate that JPEG image and have it spin one way and have the foreground spin another way. The reason being that we'll get another layer of information out of the differentials of the two. Make sense?
Yeah, well, not the technical aspects, but the concept makes absolute sense.
Okay, so basically what we need to do is we need to do a sort of a Linux kind of a thing here and just put the idea out that, look, really cool software that would be relatively simple to do in any number of languages could be crafted relatively in a relatively short period of time and in a group effort could be refined very elegantly. That would allow us to take a flattened version of or graphically altered version of crop circles as though we'd take a photograph directly down on them or as close to that as we can get. Oh, one other refinement, by the way. In the software, we need to be able to set where the center is of the crop circles because some of them are asymmetric and we need to have that ability. But other than that, the interface can be relatively static. You needn't have much more than that. But we'll find that individuals will be able to receive different layers of information at different speeds with the rotation and also in different directions. And the universe is essentially composed of counter-rotating forces. We see that the reputed space aliens use counter-rotating lights and stuff, indicative of counter-rotating forces in the way they do things there. So we should presume that they're giving us that same information to be used that same way, and that they would have presumed that we've stumbled onto this. Make sense?
That is so awesome. Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Flattening the images, how then is that embedded, let's say, information or implicit information there be able to come out?
Well, see, here's in flattening, basically what I'm saying is, excuse me, take a photograph as though you're directly up over the crop circle at some height, and then just run it through a grayscale Photoshop kind of a thing and reduce it to as simple an image as possible. The reason we have to have it simple is because of the nature of computers. They won't do well trying to spin a vast, complex, multicolored image that's very large. What they'll do best at is taking the black and white or grayscale version of that image and spinning that, because there's far fewer bits of information to have to whirl around.
Okay, it still just amazes me the advanced, I can't even say technology at this point, but in the naturally occurring, there is such brilliance in how it is done.
It's staggering. When I came across it and actually watched it, I was going to say, if you go to like YouTube and put in spinning crop circles as your search, you'll get a number of videos that do it very crudely. But you can see on some of them, you can clearly see the effect. You get a rising diamond shape, or you get a icosahedron that comes up. Some of them have even more complex shapes that appear somewhat related to the whizzing around lights that we're seeing over Stevensville, Texas, and recently over Oregon.
Wow.
So is it related? I don't know, but I wouldn't rule it out. A crop circle is just one way of encoding something. Maybe this skywriting business is the transmission of a larger layer of embedded information. We just don't know how to read it.
Can the skywriting part be captured in video?
It is. Go to like Linda Moulton Howe's site and put in Stevensville, Texas, or I think even on her front page there in headlines or whatever, they have something down there still about the Oregon one, and that'll start showing your search.
That is just fantastic. Now, is this another wink sink that the brain does not read language? It